You want to be able to trust them in their viewing decision. And last time I was here, I shared a little bit about my daughter and how she made the decision through this process, and this was my youngest one, I have 3 kids. She made the decision in the process that she was never going to watch an R-rated film. Now, as her friend later in life, I questioned that. Why no longer an R-rated film? And she said, well, because I don't want to hear a certain kind of language, I don't want a certain amount of violence, I don't want these kinds of things. I said, well, do you realize that the ratings change fairly often? And she's like, no. And I said, okay, well, that's some research that you need to look into before you make yourself your own real rule. So I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, you had a choice between going to a G movie, a GP movie, or an R movie. Now, how many of you have heard of GP movies? Yeah. Okay, one guy. Exactly. And he looks like he's about my age, so. We have to be real careful. When PG-13 came out, there was no movies made right away with PG-13. And the Motion Picture Association of America kind of were bewildered by that. They were like, how come nobody is making a PG-13 film? We've made this clear category for them. Well, no one wanted to be the first one doing it. So Steven Spielberg and a couple other well-known directors decided to make some PG-13 films. And from that day on, PG-13 was so popular that hardly ever a PG movie is made anymore. So PG is disappearing. And by the way, in case you're wondering, GP got replaced by PG, which got replaced by PG-13. When PG-13 first came out, you could have a short, brief, natural scene that had brief nudity in it. Brief frontal nudity. Natural. Had to be natural, and it had to be female, not male. Male is R. Female was PG-13. Okay, one quick, brief scene. You could also have one naturalistic F word. You all know what that is, right? I don't have to spell it on the board. Now today, PG-13, no one ever told you that the ratings have changed, but it has. Now instead of just a topless type natural moment, now you can have full body briefly, and it doesn't have to be natural anymore. And you can now have up to 2 F words, as long as one of them is natural. Good luck. Yeah, when I was a kid, there were the panel that made up the people who made the decisions as far as the ratings. All of them were what back in that day and age we would call a goody two-shoe, a person that was religious and lived wholesome life, and they were the ones that determined the ratings. Today, they want a proper mix in the world, so they have multiple races, multiple sexual preferences, multiple whatevers. And what has happened recently, last year there was a film that came out that was considered, are you familiar with the different genres like thriller and comedy and faith-based and things like that? There's lots of different genres. Well, the faith-based category is pretty much religious films now are thrown into that category. So in that film they talk about God. And the people that were on the committee said, oh my gosh, we gotta make it R because it's adult stuff. We don't want children to learn about God. Where when I was a kid, if it had God in it, it was probably a G-rated film. But today that exact same film would be considered R. Isn't that amazing? So you can't just lock in thinking PG-13 or R, whatever means a certain thing. You have to keep on checking every few years to make sure it does still mean that. Okay, enough of that. Now what we want to do is we want to break up into smaller groups. There's enough here for 3 or 4 groups, I would think. Yeah. And you could have 3 to 5 people in your group. This is what we want to discuss. First of all, talk about which parenting style you think you're currently doing, but the other one that is what you should be doing, not what you are doing, because sometimes we find ourselves doing different ones at the wrong time. Or talk about if you have kids in 2 different parenting age brackets, how sometimes you accidentally are the teacher when you should be the coach, or vice versa, and that type. So discuss where you are in your parenting phase. Then talk about the kinds of shows that your kids like, which you know are good for them, and the ones that you know are not good for them and why. And talk through about how you might be able to start implementing new processes. And get ideas from each other on these 2 categories as far as how to keep yourself on task with the proper parenting phase that you're supposed to be in, and what programming is good and how you're going to get your kids to come around to the good program. Does that make sense? Okay, let's take, where we get, when did we start? Time-wise? 12:50? 12:50? Well, let's take 10 minutes. How's that sound? Will that be enough time? Okay. Excellent. We'll chat again in 10 minutes. Thank you.